Alien. As I touched on before, it is a masterpiece, but you all know that. It's the film that revolutionized horror cinema. In fact, all of my favorite horror movies were made around this time of the late 70s, early 80s. The Shining, Halloween, The Thing, The Omen, Carrie, and Poltergeist, and The Evil Dead. However, for me the greatest sci-fi horror of all time is Alien, with The Thing an extremely close number 2. But this film is the reason I love cinema. When I was 13, I first saw the poster for the film, and was instantly intrigued, and as I did more research on it, I had stumbled upon one of the greatest horror films of all time. But it was something that I didn't understand at the time. How could a movie that doesn't get to the alien for an hour, and is just people walking or talking for the first half, be one of the greatest horror films, albeit films, of all time, which eventually steered me to a love of real cinema. However, I've already talked about Alien in my previous video, so just go watch that for my full thoughts on it. However, onto the second film, Aliens. Aliens is one of my favourite films of all time. In fact, it's in my top 10. I adore every aspect of this film. Whether it's the fast-paced action, the horrific gore, the tense atmosphere, the Colonel Marines and their magnificent badassery, Ripley's paternal arc, or the final fight. This film is simply perfect. And I can't emphasize how much I love this. And that scene of the Queen emerging might be the most terrifying big monster scene in cinema, and Ripley's emergence in the mech suit might be the most badass moment in all of cinema.
Get away from her, you bitch!
However, now we get to the sequel, starting with Alien 3, and I'm going to try and get through these ones as sort of the Cliff Notes version of this, so I'm going to try and make this relatively painless. Now, this film of course is renowned as the mother of production troubled films, as David Fincher has since disowned it, just so they could basically do the first film again, in a space prison. Ripley died at the end while giving birth to a queen in a deleted scene, and I guess that was it. But then Alien Resurrection came along. It was bad. Ripley wasn't Ripley. There was a weird alien-human hybrid, and Winona Ryder had boxing gloves. And then 15 years later, Ridley Scott returned to the franchise with Prometheus, and created a story with more open questions than Lost, the sequel trilogy, and Flash Gordon combined. The story felt aimless. It wasted interesting sci-fi concepts like the Engineers, and instead went for a generic sci-fi horror ending. And then Covenant. Covenant felt like a generic Alien sequel with unlikable characters getting picked off by aliens while David got really horny for himself.
I'll do the fingering.
Hey, what you trying to say to me?
And then there's AVP. That doesn't count. But reality is that it's been almost 35 years since the Xenomorph was in a truly great film, and this creature needs justice. If you've seen our Best Movie Villains competition, you'll know that it only lost out in the grand final by 1 vote to the milk-drinking, strudel-munching, endlessly diabolical Hans Landa from Inglourious Bastards. Harry?
You see, sometimes you gotta flip a coin and see what that decision makes to realise that it was the wrong decision. Hans Landa.
What? Are you... No. Are you serious?
So today, I'm going to be going through steps to fix the Alien franchise, and then as usual, crafting a story for the next installment in the franchise. Stop over-explaining. As we went over in our Best Villain competition, the prequels and over-analysis of a villain can often ruin their mystique and intrigue. Villains like Darth Vader, The Thing, Oz the Great and Powerful, Annabelle, or Leatherface are examples of films that tried too hard to make out this villain as some sort of greater presence, build on their motives, or simply try to fill in blanks from previous films. And while sometimes this can be alright, like Planet of the Apes, most of the time they fail to capture the essence of what made the villain so great, as it often feels like they're trying to make far too grand a build-up for something we've already seen before. One of the best examples of this is Rob Zombie's Halloween film, where they made Michael Myers into a bratty little kid, rather than just the simple disturbed preteen from John Carpenter's original. But for me, the biggest culprit of this is Prometheus. It throws in grand sci-fi concepts all to build towards something that could care less of its backstory, and doesn't change it regardless. Like when you're watching Alien, are we thinking, it is great that I know that big albino guys created this with black goo or something, and then this race was fostered by a crazy AI before crash landing on a barren planet. It's like the backstory they gave The Thing, except at least this one doesn't ruin the ambiguity of the ending. Thanks for clearing up that he needed an earring, you fucks. The point is, we don't care about where the alien came from, or why it came to be. The concept of our creators being angry at us is a cool concept that didn't need to be tied to the Alien franchise. To me, this is like what has been done with Star Wars. which at its core should be simple tales about fun characters having space adventures. But unfortunately, all this lore and expanded crap has deified Star Wars to be some big complicated messy thing when it never should be. And same goes to the Alien franchise. But to the actual films themselves, create tension. The Alien franchise has kind of just slumped into this formula for its scares. Show person exploring or marveling at the monster, then blam! Or have the person walking unaware of their surroundings, then blam! It's too predictable at this point. You need to build better scares than this tied simple way. One thing I did like in Alien Covenant was the birth of the albino alien. It was grotesque, yes, but there was a genuine fear of being trapped in a room with a birthing creature. However, the rest of the film was devoid of this tension, due to how predictable the expendability of the characters was. Scares like trying to save someone while they are being cornered by the Xenomorph are much scarier than, oh, it's over there, no, it's over there, bah! No wacky over-the-top stuff. I don't want to see Xenomorphs running around like dogs. I don't want to look at whatever this giant condom thing is. These things are terrifying. Don't make me laugh at them. Build likable characters. The only character I remember from Alien Covenant is David. The problem is that both protagonists in the new films have been their own separate Ripley ripoffs, without anything interesting with their character. Ripley might not have had the greatest backstory, but it was the evolution of her character that was so fascinating. The films have so many forgettable characters who are just there as bait, and are more concerned with the generic horror approach of the final girl. Stop treading water. It feels like the stories are just going through the motions now. They introduce a bunch of open-ended plots with no payoffs while the plot of the alien attacking everyone goes on, before they blast it out into space. Right now, everything just feels inconsequential within the universe, and they're just there to add more steps to the path to the Xenomorph. Practical effects. This is a simple one. It's more scary when we see a real thing hunting you down. Whether that's a sleek, shiny alien from the first film or the horrid, slimy ones from Aliens. It just gives them weight when they're puppets or costumes rather than CGI dogs, which adds to that fear. Scrap the canon. Now, here's where we lead into my story, and the first step is to scrap the sequels Alien Cubed and Resurrection. They both suck, they squander characters, and of course they waste the plotline set up in Aliens, mainly Rips and Hicks' relationship and Ripley's paternal angle with Newt. And speaking of those three, bring Ripley, Hicks, and Newt back. So yeah, all three are going to be alive in my story. Those two didn't get obliterated and Ripley didn't give birth to a queen. Instead, they got back to Earth and using Bishop's intelligence, they exposed Weyland-Yutani executives and basically did a personnel overhaul, which in turn allowed them to become high-ranking officials at Weyland, leading to them shutting down a large chunk of off-world colonization due to the overwhelming precautions set in place by Ripley and Hicks. Basically, could it be dangerous? Yes? Then you're not setting down. However, their actions, of course, have not exactly been turning a dollar profit, and now many of the higher-ups feel as though she is weighing down the potentials of the company. And this will lead into the plot of my story, so let's get to it with Alien Adventus. We open in space in the year 2219, seeing a ship, the Boken Shah, a Weyland-Yutani exploration craft, returning from the planet Yana 7BA, 4 days behind its schedule, floating in space. However, the engines soon go out as it drifts off its path into the far reaches of space. We cut to Earth and we see a gateway space station, where there is word of the ship, the Boken Shah, drifting off its course. And then when they try to make contact with it, there is merely static and no response from the crew. We see a large board meeting where numerous Weyland-Yutani executives are arguing with each other. Some argue that they must have found something and are stealing it, and others are arguing that the ship must have malfunctioned. Then the doors open, everyone turns to it, silent, and in walks Ellen Ripley. Does anyone want to tell me how in the fuck a 154,000-ton craft goes missing? Ma'am, we hear your concerns, and of course we are aware of your previous, experiences, but surely you must see this as merely a fault. That ship is 150 years old. There's bound to be a fault eventually with it. If I'm to assume correctly, you have 8 minimum wage employees on a mission to a foreign world. God knows what they found on its potential value. Yes, Mr. Thomas, but surely they would know that Weyland-Yutani would handsomely reward them for any otherworldly resources. Mr. Bates, if I'm not mistaken, it's that sort of thinking which is the reason that this company was deemed responsible for the deaths of all those on LV-426. Sorry, Ellen, the problem is that we must go to them and recover the crew. We have a rescue team prepared to leave dry dock in 0500 hours. On whose authority? He doesn't reply. Ma'am, if we could get a team out to the ship, repair it, and then simply be able to return it or tow it back, we'd be fine. It'll only take a month or two to reach. By that time, they could be dead. There are enough rations to last them 4 years out there. You know what I mean, Bates. Your team will leave as scheduled. However, they will be accompanied by myself and my daughter. Jesus Christ. Ripley, you cannot be serious. Bates, you heard my orders. She gets up and leaves. Bates, meanwhile, is sitting there embarrassed, Thomas smiling at him. We cut to Ripley in her office. Ma'am, your daughter is here to see you. Send her in. Newt comes in and we see that Ripley and Hicks are now married. A photo of them and Newt is on her desk. They embrace. Got a call from Dad. They arrive in an hour. Mum, it'll be fine. Ripley stares out into the far reaches of space. I know. But if there's a chance... She walks up to her and they embrace. Hey, I trust you. We see the two head down to dry dock, where Hicks arrives back from his reconnaissance mission from the Delta system, where the three unite for the first time in months. We then cut to them having dinner on the station, where they discuss the mission, and Ripley tells Hicks that she and Newt will be heading off to recover the Boken Shah, and asks him to control things at the station. Ripley and Newt then set off on the starship Tangjin with a small rescue crew as they traverse the galaxy. Collins, the leader, Josh and Ellie, 2 other soldiers, and Kyle, a young brash serviceman who is still nervous about the mission. Before hypersleep, Ripley starts to get flashes of the aliens. However, she overcomes them, remembering defeating the Queen. A month passes before they finally reach a large ship, docking into the barren ship. Lights are off, engines shut down, merely drifting aimlessly through space. A titanic ship, 3 times the size of the Nostromo. Ripley leading the mission into the large ship, noticing large empty rooms with no one there, merely just the ancient technology. They gather in the main living quarters, and they split up. Ripley, Newt, and one of the junior staffers, Kyle, and then Josh, Ellie, and Collins go into another area, all armed with pulse rifles. They go over the entire ship, finding nothing. No life. Merely some ants eating the rations left, before leaving the ship unaware of what has happened and where the crew is. Ripley communicates back to the space station that there was no sign of life or anything sinister that had happened on the cruise, however noting that the escape pod had been jettisoned. They get back onto the Tangjin, Josh and Ellie taking the ship's weapons as well. They head into cryosleep, Josh placing them all into a deep sleep. We then cut back to Hicks, who is having trouble at Weyland-Yutani, as Bates has begun to start rallying employees against Ripley, and no one is taking Six seriously enough. So one night he sneaks out and starts to look into the Boken Shah, and finds that there should be nothing wrong with it, and escapes before Bates almost finds him in the room. A day later, Ripley is awoken, completely at random, noticing a crack in the glass. She wakes up and looks around the pods, getting a horrifying vision. Kyle is dead, a massive hole in his chest. She quickly seals off the room and wakes up the others. Which one of you did it? She screams at Josh, Ellie, and Collins. She and Newt corner them with a gun. She threatens to kill them before Josh reveals what had happened, saying that he was going to be paid handsomely. Ripley realizes that this was all set up by Weyland-Yutani, asking if there was a Boken Shah to begin with. Josh telling her there was. He is about to continue when he takes Ellie and holds a knife to her neck, slowly backing away. Ripley, Newt, and Collins backing him into a large industrial sector of the ship, before they approach a dark corner where a massive black creature appears, snatching Josh and retreating into the shadows as Ripley and Newt blast the area. They reconvene and realize they need to take out the alien before they get to Earth, sending a distress signal as an unseen figure quickly shuts it down. The ship speeding towards the gateway station. They try to kill the alien multiple times, however they are unsuccessful, as it kills Ellie in her sleep and then takes out Collins as they approach the station. They communicate with Hicks and tells them that the alien is alive and that they can't take control of the ship. Then Hicks goes to confront Bates, but it is revealed that Thomas was the one taking charge of the mutiny instead, and they attempt to kill Hicks, but he manages to escape. Ripley and Newt manage to corner the creature and kill it by luring it into the engines and blasting it, as they look around to reveal that the space station has come into sight. As they get off the ship, they are arrested and taken to a cell and charged with the murder of the rescue team. However, when a group goes in to inspect the ship, it is revealed that there is a second alien that was birthed from Josh. At that moment, Hicks arrives and breaks the two out of the prison before confronting Thomas, who reveals that they blew up the Boken Shah, which was an exact model of the ship called the Artemis, which had lied dormant for a century after, when returning from a mission from LV-426, was lost, with the crew presumed dead until a life signal was detected on the ship, and they lured the Boken Shah into its path in order to have a valid reason to explore the Artemis, however saying that Ripley and Newt were meant to die, and this was their opportunity to finally bring this organism Ripley had claimed to witness almost 100 years ago to the company. We get a chaotic third act where the alien goes on a tear through the Earth space station, killing everything in sight. Ripley makes an attempt to catch Thomas and blow up the area of the space station that the alien is in, however Thomas tries to stop her from killing it. This is before Hicks begins the self-destruct process, and all of them begin to sprint out of the area, the alien in pursuit. As it approaches them, Thomas jumps into an escape pod, Ripley, Hicks and Newt just escaping the portion of the ship as the alien is trapped and blown into outer space as its area is disconnected from orbit and blown up. However, we see Thomas escaping in a shuttlecraft from the area. As he hurtles towards Earth, we see in the corner of the ship an egg, which slowly opens up. So that's my story, guys. What did you think? And what would you guys like to see out of the Alien franchise? Because I just don't see it getting any better with the current direction they're taking for the franchise. I will someday be looking to do a part 2 for this where the alien finally makes it to Earth. So thank you so much for watching, guys. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to The Young Cynics. And also the next movie pitch I will be doing is going to be for Solo 2. So subscribe to be updated for that. And this Sunday we'll be doing another bracket tournament where we'll be looking at the greatest superhero films of all time. So until then, I've been Tyrone, last survivor of The Young Cynics.